you are worth exactly $0. Not poor, not broke. Zero. If you sold everything you own today, your car, your furniture, your laptop, even the money sitting in your bank account, you would still have nothing left after paying what you owe. Most people think this is where the story begins. They're wrong. This is where almost every wealthy person's story once stood. Nobody is born with $1 million portfolio. Nobody wakes up one morning financially free. Wealth arrives quietly, almost invisibly, one decision at a time. The strange part is that every new level solves the problem below it, while creating a completely different problem above it. At $0, you worry about surviving the month. At $100,000, you worry about making your investments grow. At $1 million, you worry about protecting everything you've spent years building. And somewhere around $10 million, money stops changing your lifestyle and starts changing your influence. The journey from 0 to 10 million isn't really about money. It's about becoming a completely different person without realizing it until you look back. At $0, every decision begins with one question: can I afford it? You don't think about investing because survival leaves very little room for strategy. Your checking account feels like a countdown timer. Rent is due in 12 days. The credit card payment is due next Friday. Your car makes a strange noise every morning. And every time you turn the key, you silently hope today isn't the day it finally gives up. You don't buy groceries based on what you want. You buy whatever gives you the most calories for the least amount of money. When friends invite you out, you check your banking app before answering. Sometimes you say you're busy when the truth is far more painful. You simply can't afford to say yes. People love telling you that money doesn't buy happiness. Maybe they're right. But at $0, money buys something far more important than happiness. It buys breathing room. And until you've lived without that breathing room, it's almost impossible to explain what financial pressure actually feels like. The first $10,000 doesn't make you feel rich. It makes you feel possible. That's the difference. For the first time in your life, one unexpected expense no longer has the power to erase months of progress overnight. When your car needs new tires, you replace them without reaching for a credit card. When your phone breaks, it's an inconvenience instead of a financial emergency. You stop checking your bank account 3 times a day because the balance isn't changing fast enough to matter anymore. The anxiety that once followed you everywhere begins to loosen its grip, almost so slowly that you don't notice it's happening. Most people think the value of $10,000 is what it can buy. They're wrong. Its real value is what it prevents. It prevents desperate decisions. It prevents accepting terrible jobs because you're afraid of missing rent. It prevents small emergencies from turning into long-term debt. $10,000 isn't wealth. It's the first small wall standing between you and chaos. And once you've experienced that feeling, you realize the goal was never buying more things. The goal was buying fewer sleepless nights. Then your net worth quietly reaches $50,000, and something changes that no spreadsheet can measure. You stop seeing money as something that disappears the moment it arrives. Instead, it begins to feel like a tool that can actually work for you. Your investment account has good months and bad months, but for the first time, the line on the chart trends upward over years instead of days. You start understanding why wealthy people speak so calmly during market crashes. They aren't calmer because they're smarter. They're calmer because experience has taught them that time fixes problems. Panic usually makes worse. Friends still celebrate every raise by upgrading their lifestyle, but you notice something strange. Every extra dollar they earn already has somewhere to go before it even reaches their bank account. Bigger apartment, new car, better phone, more subscriptions. You make a different decision. You let your investments receive the raise before your lifestyle ever does. It feels boring. It feels invisible. And that's exactly why almost nobody else is willing to do it. The people chasing attention spend money that gets noticed today. The people quietly building wealth invest money that changes the next 20 years. When your net worth crosses $100,000, the number itself matters far less than what it teaches you. For years, every dollar in your account came from your own effort. Every deposit represented another hour worked, another early morning, another late night, another paycheck exchanged for time you'll never get back. Then one afternoon, you open your investment account and notice something unusual. Your portfolio gained more money this month than you personally contributed. You read the number twice because it doesn't feel real. Nobody handed you a bonus. You didn't work overtime. Your investments simply kept doing their job while you were busy living your life. That's the moment compounding stops being a chapter in a finance book and becomes something you can actually feel. Money is no longer just something you earn. It becomes something that quietly earns alongside you. Most people celebrate reaching 100,000 because it sounds impressive. The real reason it matters is far more important. For the first time, your money begins carrying part of the journey instead of asking you to carry all of it alone. By the time your net worth reaches $250,000, the biggest change isn't visible in your lifestyle. It's visible in your confidence. You stop making decisions from fear. A difficult boss no longer feels like someone who controls your future because you know one bad month won't erase years of progress. You begin negotiating salaries differently because desperation has quietly left the room. You walk into interviews asking whether the opportunity deserves your time instead of hoping they'll choose you. That's the hidden power of wealth. It doesn't just increase your options. It changes how other people respond to you. Confidence built on preparation sounds different from confidence built on hope. At this stage, you also begin noticing something uncomfortable. The people around you are still measuring success with cars, watches, vacations, and expensive homes, while you're measuring it with investment contributions, cash flow, and years of financial freedom purchased. You realize that wealth is often invisible precisely because the people building it no longer need everyone else to see it. And once that idea settles into your mind, impressing strangers starts feeling like one of the most expensive hobbies in the world. $500,000 feels nothing like you imagined it would. You expected luxury. Instead, you discover something far more valuable: time. Time to walk away from a job that no longer aligns with your values. Time to spend a month with your family without wondering whether the bills will still be paid. Time to say no without calculating the financial consequences first. Your investment statements become less exciting because the numbers are larger, but your emotional reactions become smaller. A market drop that once would have terrified you now looks like another page in a very long book you've already learned to trust. The conversations around you begin changing as well. People ask about business ownership instead of side hustles. They ask about tax efficiency instead of tax refunds. They ask how to preserve wealth instead of how to make a quick profit. You slowly realize that every financial level has its own language, and the words people use quietly reveal the stage they're living in. $500,000 doesn't make life perfect. It simply gives you enough distance from survival that you can finally begin designing your life instead of constantly reacting to it. When your net worth reaches $1 million, almost nobody notices. That's what surprises you the most. The world doesn't stop. Your phone doesn't ring. There isn't a ceremony waiting for you on the other side of 7 figures. You wake up on an ordinary Tuesday, pour the same cup of coffee you've been drinking for years, open your investment account, and see a number that once felt impossible. Then you close the app and continue with your day, because real wealth rarely announces itself. The biggest transformation happened long before the balance reached 7 digits. It happened when you learned to delay gratification, when you stopped confusing income with wealth, when you stopped buying things to impress people who weren't paying your bills. $1 million isn't the reward for becoming wealthy. It's the receipt proving you already became the kind of person capable of building wealth years earlier. Looking back, you realize the money wasn't the achievement. The habits were. The discipline was. The patience was. The million simply arrived after those qualities had been quietly compounding for a very long time. At $3 million, the conversation changes completely. You no longer ask whether you can afford something. You ask whether it's worth a piece of your life. Time quietly replaces money as the most valuable asset you own. You notice that the wealthiest people you meet aren't obsessed with earning another dollar. They're obsessed with protecting their attention. They leave meetings early if they aren't productive. They ignore opportunities that would have excited them 10 years ago. They hire people to solve problems they could easily solve themselves because they've learned a lesson most people discover far too late. Every dollar can be earned again. Every hour disappears forever. You begin saying no more often than yes. Not because you're becoming selfish, but because you've finally understood that every commitment has a hidden price. Financial independence isn't waking up one morning and deciding never to work again. It's waking up every morning knowing that work has become a choice instead of a necessity. That single realization feels richer than the number itself ever could. $5 million doesn't transform your lifestyle as much as people imagine. The bigger house, the nicer vacations, the premium seats on a flight, those things stop feeling extraordinary surprisingly quickly. Human beings adapt faster than they expect. What lasts isn't luxury, it's certainty. You stop worrying about retirement because retirement stopped being a date on a calendar years ago. You stop wondering whether your children will have opportunities because you've already built the foundation they'll stand on. Friends often assume people at this level spend every day surrounded by expensive things. The reality is almost the opposite. Many of the truly wealthy become strangely difficult to impress. Another luxury car feels ordinary. Another expensive watch becomes just another object. Experiences matter more than possessions. Peace matters more than status. Privacy becomes more valuable than attention. You realize that the most expensive thing in the world isn't a mansion or a private jet. It's the freedom to decide exactly how every day of your life will be spent. Then, almost without realizing it, your net worth reaches $10 million. From the outside, people assume this is where happiness begins. They imagine private jets, luxury homes, and a life without problems. The truth is quieter than that. $10 million doesn't remove responsibility. It multiplies it. The decisions you make no longer affect only your own future. They affect your family, your employees, your business partners, and sometimes entire communities. Wealth stops being measured by what you own and starts being measured by what you create. You begin thinking less about the next investment and more about the next generation. You ask questions that never crossed your mind at 23. What values will my children inherit? What kind of reputation will outlive me? What problems can I solve that still matter after I'm gone? Money has finally become what it was always supposed to be, a tool. Powerful, useful, and completely incapable of replacing character. Because at every level you've climbed, one truth has remained unchanged. Wealth amplifies who you already are. If you're generous, you become more generous. If you're disciplined, you become more disciplined. And if you're searching for purpose, no number will ever do that searching for you. Looking back, you realize the biggest surprise wasn't how much your bank account changed. It was how much you changed before the bank account ever did. At $0, you believed money would solve every problem. At $10,000, you discovered it could buy stability. At $100,000, you learned patience pays better than panic. At $1 million, you realized freedom feels quieter than success looks. And at $10 million, you finally understood that wealth was never the destination. It was the byproduct of thousands of ordinary decisions, repeated long after they stopped feeling exciting. Somewhere right now, someone is opening a banking app with almost nothing inside it. convinced they're years behind everyone else. What they don't know is that every person who ever built real wealth once stared at a small number, wondering if it would ever become a big one. The difference wasn't intelligence, it wasn't luck, it wasn't perfect timing. It was the willingness to keep making invisible decisions that nobody applauded until the results became impossible to ignore. Your net worth will always change. Markets will rise and fall. Economies will expand and contract. Careers will begin and end. But the habits that build wealth can stay with you for life. And in the end, that's the only investment that compounds no matter what the market does.